Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be the daughter of a billionaire? People imagine luxury, power, and a life without limits, but the truth is far colder than any fairy tale. My name is Fiona Ashford. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my life, I was raised inside a world where love was treated like a weakness and relationships were nothing more than strategic investments. My father, Richard Ashford, is one of the most powerful real estate moguls in New York City, a man who built an empire so vast he believed it made him untouchable, almost godlike. From the moment I was born, my life was planned for me. What schools I would attend, which people I could befriend, what career I would pursue, and eventually, which man I would marry. I still remember being 16 when he told me in a cold, matter-of-fact tone, "Love is a luxury for poor people. In this family, you marry for power." For years, I believed him, or at least I tried to, shaping myself into the daughter he wanted. Perfect, polished, obedient. But 6 months ago, everything changed when I broke his most sacred rule. I fell in love with a man he would later call trash. His name was James Carter, a mechanic from Queens with rough hands, oil-stained sleeves, and a smile that felt more real than anything I had ever known. I met him on a day when I felt completely suffocated by my father's world, sitting alone in a small Brooklyn coffee shop, trying to breathe after yet another humiliating meeting where my father dismissed my ideas as adequate. James noticed me before I noticed him, sat down without hesitation, and spoke to me like I was a human being, not an asset or a project. We talked for hours, and for the first time in my life, someone asked me what made me happy instead of what made me valuable. He didn't care about my last name, my status, or my wealth, and that alone made him dangerous in my father's eyes. When I told my family about him, everything fell apart exactly as I should have expected. My father had him investigated within days, presenting me with a file that reduced James to numbers: income, property value, lack of connections, and declared him unworthy, a nobody. But what my father couldn't understand was that nobody was exactly what I needed, someone who saw me as a person instead of a business opportunity. When James proposed, it wasn't with extravagance or power, but with honesty. He promised me respect, freedom, and love, and I said yes without hesitation. That decision triggered a war I never saw coming. My father cut me off financially without warning. My credit card stopped working, my access to accounts vanished overnight, and the life I had always known disappeared in an instant. Friends distanced themselves, colleagues avoided me, and opportunities dried up as if my existence had been quietly erased. It was like watching an entire world collapse simply because I chose love over obedience. And yet, through all of it, James never wavered. He stood beside me, calm and steady, offering support without trying to control me, giving me space to find my own strength. We moved into a modest apartment in Brooklyn, far from the penthouse life I had known, and for the first time, I felt something unexpected: peace. But my father wasn't finished. He came to our apartment with a blank check, offering millions to end my marriage, to come back and pretend none of it had happened. I refused, and his final warning was brutal. He would erase me completely, cut me out of his will, his company, his life. He kept that promise at our wedding in the most public and humiliating way possible. What was supposed to be an intimate ceremony turned into a spectacle when he invited hundreds of elite guests without our consent, turning the moment into a stage for his control. After the vows, he stood up and disowned me in front of everyone, calling my husband worthless and announcing that I would receive nothing from him ever again. It was meant to break me, to make me regret everything, but instead it did the opposite. I stood there, looked at the crowd, and chose myself for the first time. I declared that I would rather live with love than wealth built on control, and something shifted in that room. People stayed, celebrated with us, and for the first time, my father lost control of the narrative. What I didn't know at that moment was that the biggest twist of all was still waiting. In the months that followed, life was hard. I struggled to find work because my father's influence blocked every opportunity, and for the first time, I experienced real fear about my future.
But slowly, things began to change. A hidden trust left by my grandmother gave me just enough to start over, and I built my own company from scratch, working with small businesses, earning respect the hard way, and proving to myself that I didn't need my father's empire to create something meaningful. Meanwhile, James remained a mystery in ways I couldn't fully understand. Late night calls, conversations about board meetings, hints of a life he hadn't fully revealed. Then came the night that changed everything, the tech gala where he asked me to accompany him. I walked in expecting to feel out of place, surrounded by powerful figures, including my father, who still looked at James like he was beneath him. But when the announcement came and James walked onto the stage as the CEO of one of the fastest growing tech companies in the world, everything shattered. The man my father had called a grease monkey was actually a billionaire worth billions, a visionary who had built an empire in complete secrecy. I will never forget the look on my father's face in that moment: shock, disbelief, and something deeper, something like realization. The roles had completely reversed. Suddenly, the man he had insulted was the one he needed, the one holding the power. But James didn't seek revenge in the way my father would have. Instead, he exposed the truth, that nothing about him had changed, only my father's perception of his worth. And when my father tried to salvage the situation by proposing a business deal, James refused, making it clear that he would never work with someone who treated family like assets. That moment wasn't just about business, it was about values. The aftermath was swift. My father's reputation suffered, his business deals collapsed, and for the first time, he faced consequences he couldn't control. People who once admired him began to question him, and the empire he built on dominance started to crack. Eventually, he came to me, not as the powerful man I had always known, but as someone humbled, unsure, and almost human. He apologized, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to show that something inside him had changed. I didn't forgive him instantly, and maybe I never fully will, but I allowed him a chance to learn. Today, a year later, my life looks nothing like the one I was raised for, yet it feels more real than anything I've ever known. My company is growing, my marriage is strong, and I've discovered that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in freedom, respect, and love. I lost a fortune, a legacy, and a name that once defined me, but in losing all of that, I finally found myself. And if there's one thing my story proves, it's this: never let anyone decide your worth based on what you have or who you come from, because the moment you choose yourself, everything changes.